This podcast is sponsored by Tusk, an open source non-ICO crypto project powered by community. Check them out on the web at tusk.network. That's TUSC.network. The Rob McNealy program is the nexus of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and entrepreneurship. Now, welcome to the program. Hey, today I am talking to Jon Stokes. He is someone I met in person down at SHOT Show, but we've been talking to each other for a while on social media. He is originally one of the co-founders of Ars Technica. He's a former Wired editor and programmer, author, and now he is currently the deputy editor of ThePreparedcom. So, Jon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I think it's very prescient what's going on today in the news around the world with this coronavirus stuff. But before we kind of jump into that, give us a little bit of background about what you're working on right now and how you got there working with ThePrepared.com.
So I had taken a bit of time off, and I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do next, and I ended up starting to work on a prepping book because I had gotten into this through writing for the Firearm blog and All Outdoor. I started for Second Media, and so I had a lot of exposure to the prepping scene. I was a bit of a prepper myself. I was sort of moderately serious, like not super serious, but we covered a lot of the prepping stuff on All Outdoor. And so I kind of got plugged into it, and I learned a lot. We had the founder of the survivalistboards.com, Kevin Feltz, worked for us on there. And so just a lot of that scene. So I liked it, and I was thinking, well, what am I going to do next? And I was kind of done with the programming thing for a while. I had like a couple of years where I wanted to do like a CTO track kind of deal and like get into tech and get out of media. I didn't like online media. So I started working on this prepping book, and I was going to do a website, and I thought, something like the Wirecutter, but for preppers, because nobody had done this. And this was the kick that I had been on for like 4 years. So I wanted to do it like a Wirecutter for preppers. And then I came across The Prepared, and it had been in existence for it was coming up on the 1-year anniversary when I found the site. And I was like, man, this is like what I want to do next. I already have like a bunch of content written, and this is something that I'm really interested in. I'm going to hit up the founder and see if I can invest. So I hit up the founder. I found him on Facebook and pinged him, this guy, John Ramey, who had previously been an ad tech and was a Silicon Valley prepper guy. And so we started chatting, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking of raising around. This is bootstrapped. And so I was like, look, man, let's work together. Instead of me doing my own thing, why don't we kind of like get together and join forces? And so we did, and I ended up participating in the round and coming on as the deputy editor. And I've been working on the site since, and I think we closed the round in January of 2019, and I believe I came on full time in like November of 2018. So it's been a little over a year that I've been doing this full time.
So how's it growing?
Well, the answer prior to January of this year would have been modestly, but robustly. The answer as of January was insane bananas, and then as of today, in the past like 48 hours, we just had to upgrade the server package like massively because we've blown past like pretty much everything that we would have expected to do in like probably the next 2 years. So there is a lot of traffic right now. There's a lot of interest in what we're doing. Our timing was very good. Speaking of good timing, the blog was not a big part of the site. It was more evergreen content, guides, deep, detailed reviews, stuff that people would find via Google. And in December, we had tried to kind of boot up the blog a little bit in fits and starts, and then we built this big kit builder tool it's kind of like LighterPack. It's actually modeled a lot after a LighterPack, but it's for preppers, and it's to put together bug out bags and other kinds of kits, and keeps track of weight and price. And so I did the API for that. So I did the back end. It's basically like sort of an SPA embedded in WordPress, and then I did the API for the app. And so I kind of focused on that and let the blog languish. And so I got back into the blog in December and really started hustling the blog into December. And then SHOT Show was going to be like the big, okay, we're seriously doing the blog thing now. And SHOT Show, of course, is the end of January is when this coronavirus stuff exploded. So I was actually going back from SHOT Show, and I saw a really good friend of mine, Ari Allen Foyer, on Facebook. He was one of my old Ars writers. And he had been posted about the virus and was like, I'm going to start taking a real look at this now. And so I thought, okay, well, if Ari's posting about this on Facebook, I'm going to hit him up to write about it for The Prepared. And so, and I hadn't really, I mean, we had kept in touch on Facebook, but I hadn't followed his career since Ars, because when he started writing for me at Ars, he was an undergrad at University of Chicago. Come to find out, he's principal data scientist at GlaxoSmithKline and has a PhD in bioinformatics and develops drugs for a living. So he's like, like dead center of kind of who we would want to track this. And so he started writing about it for us. And like that work that he did was like super key, super critical. So I don't know how to mute this. Anyway, so the work that he did was really critical, and it's been taken off since then. It's been going completely nuts. It's the blog is basically just all coronavirus all the time. Now I'm going to go back into doing some gear, doing some other non-coronavirus stuff, because we are spinning up other people that can help with the load. It's basically just been me and some stuff from Ari. But that's kind of the story of the blog and the coronavirus coverage recently.
Well, I've talked, at length about, prepping and things like that. And I've been a prepper kind of minded person for a long time. I'm not like, discovering prepping like in the last week, like everybody else is right now on Twitter. But, we organize that conference every year called Off Chain, which is a mashup of crypto and preparedness and things like that. So, I actually am not freaking out because I feel pretty comfortable with where I am with our preps and things like that. Because, we just like to have an extra amount of insurance at all times, because you never know when there's going to be a natural disaster or something like that. But it's interesting right now with the way Corona is that previously or prior to this, white collar people and people that prep usually kept it quiet because they didn't want to be seen as like this, like, kook or tinfoil hat guy or this redneck kind of guy. And it's interesting, like literally like in the last month, I'm starting to see like, everyday people that are like, oh yeah, of course, prepping's what everybody should be doing. And I'm like, dude, where were you guys like 5 years ago? It's like, it seems like everybody's like now realizing that, being prepared for things is actually kind of a thing you should be doing. So, and you guys kind of come at it, I think, from a little more of the prepping side of it, at least with what I've seen on your website, is that you guys are a little more intellectual about it and not just that kind of that weird stereotype or critique that people have about, preppers in general. I mean, are you deliberately coming at it from a different perspective, do you think?
Yeah, we really didn't want to do anything that looked like a traditional prepper website. And in fact, my personal goal, and I think Jon, the founder, shares this goal, is that it'd be great if at some point in the future the word prepping wasn't even on the website. This should just be like a normal part of adulting. It should be a thing people do. It shouldn't be like a niche activity or a subculture. People shouldn't have to learn a new lingo. There's not, there was a car enthusiast scene, back in the day, muscle cars and stuff. Now just, there's still a car scene, but like people just own cars. You have a car, I mean, I can think of half a dozen analogies, but there shouldn't be a niche activity that has its own lingo and subculture, and, people are into it in secret or in public or whatever. It's just part of what you do. It's like buying home insurance or there's no fire insurance community. There's no home insurance community. There's no, anything like that. It's just something you do. So that's very much where we come at it from.
Well, I see that every year during like hurricane season where all of a sudden they show the typical grocery store shelves are completely empty. And I'm thinking, if you live on the coast in Florida, this should never be happening.
Yeah,
'Cause-
yeah. I grew up in Louisiana on the Louisiana Gulf Coast. I know what it's like to put your stuff in the car and sit for hours in a hurricane evacuation line. I have evacuated a couple times. My family evacuated for Rita right after Katrina. I worked in the Katrina shelters in Lake Charles, Louisiana, where I'm from. So yeah, hurricane preps, tracking hurricanes during hurricane season, having fuel, having stuff on hand to be ready to bug out. This was just what you did when you lived there. There was no subculture. There wasn't like a term for it. We didn't call it anything. You just were ready for a hurricane.
So, coronavirus. There's been a lot of media attention given to this, and it's interesting how, at least on social media, it's somehow becoming a partisan political issue, which to me is absurd. But yet, you're seeing out there where some people are saying the coronavirus is overhyped, some people are saying is underhyped. Where is your take? Or what's your take on it? Where are you coming from on the corona? Is this something that Americans should be worried about now?
Yeah, I think whether it's overhyped or underhyped depends on your filter bubble. I mean, really, it's just this is a moment that has highlighted for me the degree to which we all kind of live in different information silos, dependent on where you get your news, who you follow, what kind of voices you listen to. You're going to be in a completely different headspace about this. And this information, these silos, they're not disjointed, they leak into each other. So I have a very carefully curated list that I have for this. Some people discover it, so you can subscribe to it on my Twitter feed. I follow people. I'm constantly adding and deleting people, and there has been a political aspect to it since the beginning. Frankly, there are some people in infectious disease, virology, epidemiology, who have been more or less alarmed. There have been some people that have come from a certain political slant that you can tell from their bios that are constantly telling everybody to calm down and not panic, and this is no big deal, and they've set themselves over against the alarmist people. And that's how it is. People have different opinions on things, especially about the future. So I've watched this evolve. I've watched virology and infectious disease Twitter and epidemiology Twitter evolve and kind of converge on a more heightened state of concern, heightened state of alarm. I've watched my media feed. I have a media network from 20 something years in online media. I've watched them take up this topic and begin talking about it and worrying about it. I'm starting, as of the last 24 hours, to see this really spread in a big way in my normie feed on Facebook. Used to, I would post something from The Prepared, I'd get like 3 likes. Now the kind of stereotypical, suburban moms and dads and just normie people are picking up our posts and our Wuhan coronavirus page and are sharing it. It's blown up just in the past 48 hours. So there has been a lot of different, depending on what subset you are, depending on where you listen, who you listen to, your political affiliation. And yeah, there is, I'm aware that Rush Limbaugh is telling people that this is some kind of Democrat plot to tank the election, tank the markets, and something like this. I know that that's going on. I'm not engaging with it publicly, like on Twitter and stuff, because ain't nobody got time for that. Like we're here trying to get people ready, and I don't care what kind of politics you have. If you're super Trumpy, if you're Bernie Sanders stan, Elizabeth Warren, I just don't care. I want you to be ready. I want you to have the right information, and I want you to have your head in the right place about this. As far as being concerned about it, I'm really concerned. I mean, I think that school closures in this country in a lot of areas are kind of, I really think that's a lock. I think it's going to happen. As far as, voluntary shelter in place from a lot of people is going to happen. It's already happening. There are already people that I'm in touch with that are bugging out, leaving the city, going out to the country if they've got like a relative, something like this. That's already quietly happening. Just the way that the Costco runs have been kind of quietly happening this week. So more of that's going to pick up, more of that's going to happen. How far this is going to go, very difficult for me to say. I try not to. You can always very plausibly model a worst case scenario. You just can. And I am a guy that has followed every crisis in the last 2 years, like in a detailed way. So when we were nose to nose with North Korea in the summer of 2017, I was like, I had a NatSec Twitter feed, a national security Twitter feed. I followed it super closely. I knew how close we came. The Iran stuff from last summer, I followed that really closely. I was on, pins and needles with it. Like every one of these different crises that we've had recently, I've been right in there. I followed the experts, and I know how bad it can look, and I know how it can dissipate. I've seen it all happen. You never press the red button because something always happens. But I also was an investor during 2008, and I followed 2008 closely and the unfolding there. So I've seen like a real legit crisis happen. And what I've learned is you can't predict the future. There are some drugs. We're about to have a blog post on this. Now that the blog is back up, I have a post in the can that I've got to edit. There are some drugs, like an anti-malarial drug and some other drugs that are very, very promising at arresting the disease that goes with this. So we're not going to have a vaccine anytime soon. A year would be an absolute minimum, but we may find other therapies that work. So summer could still, I don't put a lot of faith in the idea that warm weather is going to knock this out, but it could tamp it down. Some combination of summer weather and a malarial drug, which is already made at scale, could be ramped up and could help and could forestall some of the worst case scenarios. So there's a range of possibilities, but I think minimum baseline is going to be, you're going to be at home for a week or two. Your kids are going to be at home for a while. You may have to remote work, stuff like that. I think that stuff is very, very, very likely.
So it's interesting. So my perspective on things like this is I monitor, and I'm open-minded, and I'm a skeptic all at the same time. And so I'm very curious, and I don't tend to overreact. Some may know that my wife is actually a medical doctor who actually works as a government contractor to the federal government. And I'm a former EMT. And so I do view things through the eyes of a person who's worked as a first responder for a long time. And on this issue, and I try to be very rational and controlled about how I view it. I think the big unknowns that I think a lot of people that I'm seeing around the coronavirus is the fact that many of us don't trust China. And I think the big unknown is what's BS, what's real, and what's happening in China. Because you see all these random, clips, then you don't know the context of the clip, you don't know where it came from, things of that nature. But that's what has a lot of us, like me, concerned is I don't know what's real. Are the numbers on that little tracker app that's out there, are those real? Are being underreported? Are they being overreported? The one thing that, at least between conversations with my wife and I about this, is that at least in my lifetime, I can't remember where large population centers in China have been completely locked down in this quarantine. I don't recall that's ever happened before. So in my mind, this isn't just SARS. This isn't the flu. This is something different. It definitely has some government officials over there concerned because they're taking much more extreme action than I've ever seen. So the question is that I would have for you, do you believe that the numbers and reporting about this in China are accurate, being underreported, overreported, or are normal?
So we have a reporter in Beijing that is done some work on this for us and is a source. And she writes for a mainstream outlet, is fluent in English and Chinese, is native Chinese. And we've talked to her about this. I followed this, and my take home on that is that, of course, the absolute numbers coming out of China in terms of the magnitude are garbage. They're not real. But directionally, in terms of when things are swelling and when they're dropping, that seems to be broadly like probably right. I think that it seems likely that the extreme lockdown measures that the Chinese have done have arrested the spread and stopped the growth in new cases outside of Hubei. I think that's probably likely. I think it's likely that things may be getting better in Wuhan right now. Again, now these are people that have been locked down for weeks. They have been under very welded doors, welded shut, not able to go out for groceries, extreme quarantine measures. That's going to have an impact. Social distancing is, apart from hand hygiene, social distancing is the number one thing that you're going to do to turn the RO around in the absence of a vaccine. To turn the RO is the viral coefficient, which says how far it spreads, and so you want to get that below 1. And so to get it below 1, if you don't have a vaccine, you're going to have to keep people from spreading it to each other, like physical separation. The Chinese have done an insane amount of that, and it's probably worked. Outside of so my point there is that, like, directionally, when you look at the China numbers, of course there's far more cases, far more deaths than they've reported, but I think it is very likely that things are getting better in some of the cities because of the extremeness of the measures. Big questions are, can we do that here in the West? Can you do that? Can you lock down a Chicago when people have got guns and stuff like this? Open question. To me, I think if people are scared enough, maybe, but I really don't know. Other questions are about the Chinese health system. Now, in the WHO's ranking of health systems, they're pretty far down there, below us. But then, these Asian countries have been prepping for SARS, MERS, stuff like this for a while, and they've got ventilators. China can ramp up hospital production, stuff like this. So there are a lot of unknowns there. I think it's more instructive for me to look at what's happening now and what's unfolding in South Korea, what's unfolding in Japan, Iran less so, but still that stuff is going to tell the tale. Because yeah, you're right, China is largely a black box, a lot of noise, very difficult to get signal. But now things are in a different realm. Italy, keep an eye on Italy,
Yeah, one of the things that my wife and I have kind of looked at is the United States is very different than Asia and Europe. If those different, those countries decide that you're going to stay put, they will enforce that. Whereas Americans are a little more persnickety about constitutional rights and things like that. And I keep thinking, I've seen people where they have tuberculosis or something, they should be going around in public because they're supposed to be under self-quarantine, and they're like, well, I ran out of smoke, so I had to go to the store, right? And between our, our homeless populations and Americans just happen to travel a lot more than I think a lot of places around the world, like China. People don't move around quite as much as we do. And I think, Americans are going to be less likely to do self-quarantine. For instance, and I was talking to some people in a group that I'm in a group right now that is talking about prepping for this. And look at it like this. Americans send their kids to school when they're sick, and they go to work now sick because they think nothing of possibly infecting their friends or coworkers because it might be inconvenient for them to stay home or have their kids stay home. And I'm not sure that's going to change just because of this. And it goes back to, people are, going down, partisan lines and saying, some people are like, oh, it's no big deal and all this other stuff. And I'm like, there's two factors that have me most concerned. because you're right, we don't know yet how bad it is, because until it starts getting into other countries and where we have probably better information and communication coming out, it's hard to evaluate, what this really looks like. And I agree with you. I think the extreme powers that the Chinese government have the quarantines and the extreme measures they've taken probably are effective. I don't think the American government can do the same thing. And I don't think Americans would put up with it. And that's what has me concerned about here, that it actually might get more, if it is as bad as we think it is, it might get more out of hand here than it would, say, in China. The other thing that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, the other thing that has me concerned is the economic impacts of this. I've been trying to do some research about how much of our supply chain it comes from China, and the numbers range from anywhere from 20 to 50% of all the stuff we get is manufactured in China right now. And my concern is that depending on which store you're talking about, we only have between 30 and 90 days of inventory in like their buffer, right? That's about what the American supply chain holds currently. The question is, how long is China going to be shut down from their production levels? And how is that going to impact the United States? And so to me, even if, say, we don't have a viral outbreak that gets out of hand here, how does the economic impact of the Chinese government and their production, how does that trade impact, our economy? For instance, a big chunk of our building materials are supplied from China right now. And right now, a lot of our economy is being driven by the current housing bubble that we're in. Well, even if, the price of materials goes up 20% or 30%, that could do a lot to put the brakes on the housing market, which could really hurt the economy. Have you been looking at any of the potential economic impacts of coronavirus outside just the normal viral part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an investor. I pay close attention to this. I'm very concerned about it. I've been talking to other finance people and investor types. They were largely not concerned before Sunday night. Sunday night, there was some kind of shift in the zeitgeist. I think, one of the things was that the stock market futures just started to get really ugly. And it was clear on Sunday night that it was going to be a bloodbath on Monday. That there was a big shift in the zeitgeist on Sunday. I woke up Sunday morning, I had conversations with market types, and they were like, yeah, I'm a little worried about this, but we're going to handle it. And then Sunday night, it turns into, there's a lot of deer in my neighborhood that I can shoot. So it's like, seriously, things change fast for a lot of people. And so I'm worried about this. It's hard for me to model. A lot of what I think is that this is we're not destroying a lot of productive capacity. This is not like a war where a factory's getting bombed or something like this. It's one of these things where there may be some kind of V-shaped recovery once people go back to work, factories reopen. That kind of thing. And I think the system will knit itself back together more rapidly than people think. That said, everybody with a brain is now looking at their dependence on single sources in China and Asia and thinking, okay, well, clearly I've got geographic risk. I knew that I had geographic risk, but I didn't care, but now I care. This isn't going to happen again, and we're going to diversify. And so that's going to have all kind of impacts on the cost of goods and employment in the U.S. and stuff that's really hard to think through. But my top line is that at some point, depending on how bad this gets, I mean, there's scenarios where you've got medical bankruptcies that freeze up the credit system and vaporize a big chunk of the economy. You've got a scenario where a lot of people are staying home, looking after their, schools out. Like, let's say that we did what just happened in Japan today, where they announced that all the schools are closed. Somebody's going to look after those kids. So that's a lot of people staying home and a lot of people missing paychecks. A lot of people aren't financially prepared. There could be a really large impact, but I think the government's going to, I think the government up to and including negative rates and helicopter money. They're going to do what they can do to get people spending again. So we have maybe some tools there. I don't know. I try to maintain some optimism as an investor that we can snap back pretty quickly. And I also, part of this is my experience in 2008. You know, I was bearish for too long. I was bearish into 2010. So I missed a big turn up in the market. And, you know, I finally got religion near the end of 2010. I was like, okay, well, this, you know, this is real. There's a real recovery here. This is happening. And I got back in. So I've seen how fast things can turn around, how suddenly they can turn around. And the big thing to remember too, and this is what people miss, I think, with a lot of the doomsday scenarios and the doomsday prepping, is when you bet against the market and you bet against civilization and the economy, you're betting against the combined efforts, the best efforts of billions of people to make this thing go. Humans collectively are trying to make it work. We're all trying to make it work, whatever, for some definition of making it work. And I don't want to bet against that. I don't want to gamble that all those billions of individual efforts at trying to make something productive, trying to make money, trying to hustle, trying to feed themselves are going to go to pot. You know, they're going to amount to nothing. So I, like I said, I maintain some optimism, but there are scenarios I think here. I think our hospital system is very under-resourced. We have a lot of problems, like I said, with people missing work, medical bills, all this kind of stuff is bad already. And this virus is going to whack it hard, and we're going to see how that shakes out. And it could get really ugly. We don't have a lot of capable centralized response, not a lot of capability to respond to this. Then there's the election. You know, I wrote that big Wired op-ed. I say big in terms of length. It was very long. I think it also did pretty well in terms of traffic, but it was a media editorial about the possible impact on the election and how, you know, do we really want to send people to polling places to stand in line and breathe on each other and touch the same touch screens in November if we've got a viral epidemic raging over here and filling up hospitals? I don't think we do. So there's that aspect. I said we should move immediately to vote by mail. I do not hold out a lot of hope of anything like that happening. I think what is probably realistically going to happen is we're going to have a big fight over if there is a big, if the summer doesn't stop it, and if we're not able to tamp it down, and if we're still like very substantially fighting this in November, I think that we're going to have a big argument over whether or not to postpone the election, because there will be a lot of dense urban areas where people are not going to want to turn out for this. And we will probably not postpone the election. I think the baseline scenario is absolutely nothing gets done. There is no vote by mail. There is a fight over putting it off, but nothing is put off. And then we just have a situation where rural turnout is a lot better than urban turnout. And, you know, who knows which way things swing. If the rural types are still looking for another Trump term, or if they're soured on them because of the coronavirus response, I don't have a crystal ball. But either way you slice it, 2020 is going to be even more contentious than we all kind of thought it was. And I know a lot of people, myself included, were looking for trouble around the election in 2020, thinking, well, things are going to get spicy, and we're going to be at each other's throats. And we may see some instances of domestic, you know, crazy breakout here. And I think we were already worried about that. I was already worried about it. Now I'm even more worried about it.
So before we wrap up here, what would be the things that you say now? What advice would you give to someone who is not already prepared? What would be the things that you think people should stock up on right now while there's still things on the shelves?
Obviously, the big one is prescription meds. If you're on something, try to get a stockpile of that by hook or by crook, whatever you got to do. You know, I'm not that I'm telling people to go on the dark web and, you know, order drugs, but like seriously, I wouldn't even know how to find the dark web personally. I mean, you might get some garbage that's like fake or fentanyl.
I'll send you a URL to
Yeah,
go find the dark one.
really, yeah, don't do that. I know nothing about the dark. I know nothing, but yeah, however you got to do it. If you're on something, if you're on heart meds, whatever it is you're on, and a sudden stoppage of it is gonna wreck your business. Figure out how to get some more. That's the number one thing. The number two thing is you need hygiene. You need hygiene products, especially for a pandemic. So they talk about, I think it's are there 3 H's of survival or 4? There's hygiene and heat and hydration, and that's actually not the right order. I think it's like heat, hydration. Anyway, there's some order that they're in. Hygiene is one of the big ones. That kills a lot of people in any kind of survival or disaster situation. Hygiene is huge. So you want to get toilet paper, which was being used as currency in Hong Kong and the Hong Kong lockdowns. You want to get toilet paper, feminine hygiene products, bleach, alcohol, things to clean your body, things to clean your space that you're in. If you're in a confined space with a lot of humans for 3 weeks, it's going to get nasty, and you want to keep it clean. Personal protective gear. If you don't already have a mask, you're not going to get one. Those are out. Nitrile gloves are still in stock. Pick those up. They're probably more important than the mask anyway. So that kind of stuff. So hygiene stuff, prescription meds, plenty of water, potable water. I do not think the grocery stores we're going to be in a situation where there's no groceries, at least after some initial panic surge. There may be like a spell where everybody runs out, possibly this weekend. Everybody runs out and just cleans out the grocery store. The trucks are going to keep running. There will probably still be groceries. So that's why I put food, less underneath water, PPE, stuff like that. Still get food. Start with 2 weeks, but get a month, get 3 months if you can. However much, I'm telling people to shoot for 90 days. Very few people are going to get there, but try to shoot for 90 days, but do what you can. And just think about the fact that you're going to be eating for a month, 2 months, 3 months, regardless. Try to get it all at once and then eat your way through it, as opposed to just going to the store once a week or, every couple of days. You want food, you want entertainment, things to distract yourself. Boredom has been a big problem in the Chinese lockdown. And the other thing that's happening, per our source in China, is that people just get on social media and they drive each other crazy. They share rumors and conspiracies and weird stuff, and their mental state deteriorates. And they just, it's a bad scene. It's a bad scene if you've got a couple of 100 million people in lockdown, which is what happened in China, and they're all on social media driving each other nuts. So you want to have something else to do besides Facebook, besides Twitter, besides whatever you're into, to be able to unplug from the news and get off that stuff and spend time with whoever you're in lockdown with and connect with people. So board games, puzzles, books, any of that stuff. Those are all now, congratulations, your board game addiction, your puzzle addiction, video games, whatever, those are now pandemic preps. You're blessed to go forth and load up your Steam library or Nintendo downloads or whatever. Because you really just want to maintain a good mindset. You want to be able to make high quality decisions. You want to be able to see what's going on clearly, and you don't want to be in a panic or in a frenzy, hopped up on a bunch of weird rumors about what's going down at the local supermarket, or somebody found this, or the virus is here or there. You don't want to be into that stuff. So look out for your mind. Protect your physical person, your body, keep yourself clean, keep your space clean, keep yourself fed, keep yourself hydrated.
Sounds good. Jon Stokes, where can people find out more about you?
ThePreparedcom. Visit and check us out. My personal website is just like a bare HTML page, jonstokes.com, jonstokes.com. You can find out more about what I do and what I'm into there. But really, ThePrepared.com is where I'm spending all my time, every waking minute now with this virus stuff.
Very good. And I will make sure that I have all that linked up on our website at robmcnealy.com. Jon, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Rob McNealy program. Make sure you check us out on the web at robmcnealy.com and subscribe to our podcast at YouTube, iTunes, and on the Google Play Store.